Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the CalAIM PATH Technical Assistance Marketplace webinar. My name is Lisa Bistra. I am the Chief over the Providing Access and Transforming Health, or PATH unit. I'm joined today by my colleague, Michael Weezar. He is the Chief over the Managed Care Program Oversight Branch, and Jill Clayton. She is the Chief over our Project Coordination section. And then alongside our third-party administrators at Public Consulting Group, we have Jenna Walt with the TA Marketplace lead, Courtney Schaefer, the TA Marketplace team member, Bella Praneta, a TA Marketplace team member, and Mayor Sachtiva. She is also a TA Marketplace team member. And with that, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Jenna.
Great, thank you, everyone. I do just want to start out by stating we are experiencing some Zoom difficulties with some of the features. I did drop a chat to everyone via the chat. If folks can try testing that to see if you're able to communicate with us that way. Unfortunately, if we're not able to do that, we will be sending out a survey to all registrants for this event with a jot form link so that you can submit your questions during the webinar, and we can utilize the Q&A session to review those questions with you all. And as always, all questions that are submitted will also be addressed in our Q&A document. I am not seeing anything actually entered on my end, so I think with that, I will ask my colleague to send out that survey to all folks that we had on our registrant list. So please just be looking out for that email from us momentarily. But with that announcement, and I apologize for those difficulties, but we do have a great agenda for today. We will start with just a brief update on the state of the marketplace. We will then go into some content around project submission timelines, clarifying the TAM limitations, how to submit a successful TA marketplace project based on some reworks that we have been seeing over the past couple weeks. We'll also have a demo on how to reset your MFA, as we also are still receiving quite a few questions in the inbox about that and want to give you a guide on how best to address that issue. And then lastly, we will end with some other policy reminders and of course that Q&A session, which again, we will utilize that jot form survey that will be going out momentarily to registrants to have those questions answered. Next slide, please. All right, so starting with the current state of the marketplace, we can go to the next slide. Again, for folks who may be new, the TA Marketplace is part of the PATH initiative and is to support folks that are intending or already providing ECM and community supports under CalAIM to receive free technical assistance from our qualified vendors. The TA Marketplace was launched by PCG with oversight from DHCS, and that marketplace is available publicly for viewing. Next slide, please. So eligible TA recipients, this has not changed. We continue to receive TA recipient applications from counties, government agencies, CBOs, tribal entities, etc. But again, we do still have the requirements around contracting. So if a recipient is contracted with a managed care plan, we do request that supporting documentation. If you are engaged with a managed care plan, we request a signed attestation form. And then we do have our third pathway in which you can be approved by DHCS. However, you must be intending to become contracted. And for both those option 2 and option 3 entities, you will need a project that has a specific goal related to contracting. Next slide. Our project types and domains. So again, we have our 7 domains here. There are full descriptions and project examples on the website. With the rise in the need for support with contracting, we are seeing an increase in domain 3, but of course the other domains are also available for you if that meets your most immediate TA needs. And we do have the 2 different project types as well as on-demand resources. We have those off-the-shelf TA projects that are ready to go, and hands-on projects that are customized based on the TA needs. Next slide. and where we are today. So we have, as of the start of this month, almost 1,700 projects approved and executed across 625 TA recipients. So definitely some growing numbers in the disbursement of projects across recipients, which is really great to show the amount of projects being provided to different agencies. And we're really excited to see the continued growth. Next slide. Okay, I am going to also briefly provide an update on project submission timelines. So we can go to the next slide. So one really important update, and I want to just make sure we've received some emails over the past few months, but we are continuing to review all submissions with a new criteria in mind. But we did want to note the timeframes in which we are reviewing at this point. We are experiencing, about 4 to 6 weeks for the marketplace to review any submissions, and that is inclusive of TAM and DHCS's review and approval. So please be aware of that as you are submitting and requesting the TA support. I will note we do strive to be, review as quickly as we can. However, we are kind of sticking to that 4 to 6 week timeline. And of course, we've also been updating our policy guides. So those are on the website if you have any questions about kind of timelines and processes. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick overview of that PEA process. So again, we have the PEA process, which is the first step to getting a TA project. So as you can see, where the stars are is where we can expect to see the review timeframes. What's important to note here is that if we require some updates to your PEA, you will see that we request that via rework in the console itself. So you'll see a little comment there, and that does restart the kind of review process. So, we will be needing to build in that additional time frame for review before we can send it off to DHCS for their approval or final determination. Next slide. And then once you have a successful PEA, again, this is the scope of work and budget process overview. These are slides that we have shared before, but again, we do have the stars just indicating where that time frame for review kind of takes place. I will again note that the rework process does restart that review time frame. So just important to note that we really request that you take the time at the start to submit a really strong application with as much detail as possible. Ensure you're including all the requested information that's outlined in the policy guides to avoid that rework process. And again, also important to note here is once that project gets approved by DHCS, the project is not actually executed until both the recipient and vendor have signed that scope of work and budget. That is through Adobe Sign, so you will receive an email for that legal signatory that is indicated on the scope of work and budget to have that scope of work and budget fully executed by both signatures, and then work can begin at the indicated project start date on the scope of work and budget. Next slide. So project timelines, I will note this twice, but we are still accepting scope of work and budgets, PEAs, TA recipient applications. We are still accepting all applications. I know that there was some previous guidance in older versions of the policy guides that indicated a different time frame. That has been removed, and we have been communicating that we are receiving all applications at this point, so long as you meet the TAM limitations. One important note that has not changed, though, is that all projects must be completed by December 31st of 2026. And that is just due to the waiver period for CA PATH ending. Again, we are reviewing the submissions within 4 to 6 weeks, and do request that you consider that when submitting your projects. Lastly, I will just note that as indicated in the TAM limitations, we do request that scope of work and budgets be completed within 1 year. This is particularly will need to be necessary as we approach the end of this year, since the December 31st date will be approaching within that time frame. Next slide. And again, just to reiterate, we are continuously evaluating funding and application submissions. We are carefully reviewing each project and making sure that we are equitably distributing projects and funds. We are accepting applications within the new limitations as of today, and we expect to do that throughout, early next year and even beyond if possible. There is no final submission date for applications at this time. We will communicate with you via emails, announcements, communication channels if there are any changes to our submission policies, timeline policies, or anything else. So please be sure that we have your contact information. You are signed up for the CA PATH newsletter. We've been sharing important updates there. So again, we are accepting new applications and look forward to your submissions. All right. And I apologize. I think, am I passing to Courtney? Actually, I think, let's see.
If you want to cover the slide, that'd be great.
Okay, sorry. Jumped ahead. So invoicing. We've also been receiving a couple of questions around invoicing. So just a general update that appears again in the policy guide is that invoices can occur either monthly or quarterly based on the completion of your scope of work and budget activities. Recipients with invoices pending approval must approve them by the 15th of the month in order for those invoices to be complete. So again, just because a vendor submits an invoice at the start of the month or prior to that 15th date does not consider the invoice to be complete until the TA recipient has actually approved the invoice. Once the recipient has approved the invoice and it's been received, the finance team will review the invoices after the 15th and will be in contact with you via the back office or the console if there are any questions or concerns with that invoice. Another important note is just the final invoicing. So when you have completed your project, final invoices are due within 60 calendar days of that project end date. We are also requesting that once you have completed and received payment for your projects, that the vendors complete the project closure report as outlined in the vendor policy guide. This will just help us with tracking any unused dollars so that we can reallocate those back to the TA Marketplace to fund future TA projects. We also have included in the vendor policy guide is these final invoicing deadlines post the end of 2026. So it's really important to note that final invoices for any projects still active in December or last quarter of 26 that you are submitting timely, and that includes recipient approvals so that we can ensure final payments. If you have any questions about invoices, the finance team is there to support, and the TAM team, of course, as well. Next slide. All right, and now I think I will pass to Courtney. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenna. Okay, over the next couple of slides, we're going to touch on the existing limitation criteria and how they apply to both our TA vendors and recipients. So new changes were implemented in our processes on the marketplace to help ensure resources are distributed as equitably and as efficiently as possible. These limitations were developed with thoughtful consideration between the TPA or PCG and the DHCS leadership. And these limitations are as follows. Projects will be approved for only new TA recipients unless applying for transitional rent, support, or as determined by DHCS. There's a limitation of one TA project per TA recipient. TA recipients that are not yet contracted with managed care plan for ECM or CS services will be required to provide a rationale for how their TA project will support contracting efforts. And finally, TA projects may not exceed $150,000 and must be within 1 year. So to illustrate how these limitations impact project submissions, we've outlined a series of if-then scenarios below. These examples are designed to help organizations determine their eligibility and understand how limitations apply when they're submitting, in this case, a PEA. So if a recipient has executed projects on the TA Marketplace, then the organization will not be eligible for future TA. If the recipient has an executed project on the TA Marketplace, but they are applying for a transitional rent project, then the recipient is eligible for one transitional rent project. If a recipient is new to the TA Marketplace and is approved as an option 1, then the recipient is eligible for one project. If a recipient is new to the TA Marketplace and is approved as option 2 or 3, then the recipient is eligible for one project, and then that one project has to include how the TA will support MCP contracting efforts. For our vendors, and also by extension recipients who are preparing a scope of work and budget for new projects under these limitations, the following if-then scenario illustrates how the requirements apply to those SOW submissions. So if a vendor is developing an SOW for a recipient who is an option 2 or 3, then MCP contracting components are required to be a part of the SOW. And then number 2, if a vendor is submitting a no-cost extension for a project that is currently version 2 or 3, then the no-cost extension will be denied because the project has previously been extended and or amended. If a vendor submits an SOW and the duration or cost of the project exceeds 1 year or $150,000, then the SOW will be put into action required, and the duration of or cost will need to be decreased. And then finally, if a vendor submits an SOW and the duration and cost of the project is under a year and less than $150,000, then the SOW will be reviewed and approved like normal, and if all other elements fit are just general requirements. So how we communicate all of this to you. After the submission and review of a PEA, a TA recipient and vendor will receive communication regarding the approval of their project through an automated email. If the submission needs to be reworked, the recipient will receive feedback and guidance in the TA recipient console through an external comment, and this will always be paired with a "you have a new message" email that can be received in your inbox. Should a project be denied, the recipient will be notified also via an automated email. And these automated emails are sent to all users that are listed within your TA Marketplace console account. And similarly for the SOW processes, all approved SOWs will have an automated Adobe sign sent upon approval to formally sign and execute the contract. Reworks will be communicated through external comments and action required emails. And finally, any denied SOWs will be communicated also by an automated email. Any questions that you may have about where applications are during the receive, the review, and the approval process, this can be clarified by the TA inbox. I think I'm passing it on to Bella.
Yes, thank you, Courtney. So now that we've discussed the PEA and SOW processes as well as limitations, we'll go over some tips to ensure a successful TA Marketplace project submission and highlight some common challenges and how to avoid them. We can go to the next slide. So first we'll start with PEAs. The first common challenge we see is if transitional rent projects are submitted without the required letter of support. Any recipient, regardless of contracting status, must submit a letter via email to the TA Marketplace. That includes a letter of support from their county that affirms the county's support for the recipient's role as a transitional rent provider. The letter will only be accepted if it includes the specific elements laid out in the Transitional Rent Letter of Support Guidance published by DHCS, and a template for this can be found on the DHCS website. We can go to the next slide. Another common challenge that prevents a PEA from approval is if the PEA description does not include a connection to MCP contracting if the recipient is either an option 2 or option 3 recipient, meaning they're not yet contracted with an MCP. Some examples of where MCP contracting has been included are listed on this slide and include preparing the recipient to contract by aligning processes, policies, and procedures with CalAIM MCP standards, providing the recipient the skills and supporting materials to successfully execute an MCP contract, or providing the recipient ongoing support for engagement with MCPs, including strategy, credentialing, and compliance with documentation. We can go to the next slide. When a PEA review team determines the PEA cannot move forward, they will provide review comments to the recipient with recommendations to amend the project upon resubmission. These comments can be found in the recipient console. If this happens, the recipient will receive an email with the message on the top right-hand corner of this slide that prompts them to visit their console to view the comment left by the reviewers. In the comment, the reviewer will include direction for the recipient to withdraw the current PEA and submit a new PEA with the recommended changes. The recipient will be able to find this PEA in their in-flight application tab and will have the option to select withdraw. This then puts the PEA in the withdrawn application tab where the recipient can reference it in the future. Next slide. Moving on to scope of work and budgets, the first common challenge we often see is if the MCP contracting component is not specific to procuring new MCP contracts. As mentioned previously, option 2 and 3 recipients must include a contracting component in their TA projects. These activities must be designed to actively prepare and enable the recipient to secure an MCP contract. As listed on this slide, this might include providing guidance to the recipient on understanding the contractual terms for a specific MCP, supporting the development of the contract management process, clarifying staffing requirements to meet MCP contracting expectations, assisting in preparation and submission of certifications required for contracting, but not limited to facilitating or supporting contract negotiations. Next slide, please. Another issue we see is when other direct costs are not calculated with GSA rates or do not provide a detailed breakdown of costs by line item. If the vendor decides not to include travel within their labor rates, the vendor should travel by the most economical means available required by the GSA travel policies and rates. These costs should be broken down by line item and category. For example, lodging should be in a different line than flights. If requesting travel, the in-person meeting details should also be justified and identified in the project management section of the SOW. Next slide, please. Once review of the SOW is performed, the reviewer will provide external comments that are typically organized by section of the SOW that needs to be addressed. These comments can be found on the right-hand side of the SOW. And once the vendor makes the changes based on guidance provided, the recipient will have an opportunity to review the changes and submit the SOW back to the vendor, who then submits it back to the TAM team for another, hopefully final review. Similar to the PEA process, when a comment is left in the console, the vendor and recipient will receive an email notification as seen on the right side of the screen that prompts them to log into their console and view the comment. And we can go to the next slide. And I believe I am passing it to Meher. Or possibly
This is
Jen.
Courtney.
Yes, there you're good. Okay, thank you, Bella. So the next couple slides, I'm going to walk everyone through the process of resetting your multi-factor authenticator. And then this is the app that generates your code that you need to log into your TA Marketplace account. So your multi-factor authenticator, or I'm going to shorten it to MFA, may need to be reset if you got a new phone and the authenticator app was installed on your old device, if the app was mistakenly deleted off your phone, or if you're receiving error codes when you're trying to log in. In all those cases, a reset can assist you in regaining access to your account. To start the reset process, the user would first receive an account has been created for you email, and this contains both a username and a temporary password, and both the TA inbox and the admin of your account can initiate the restart process by selecting the restart button. For step 1, the user will first enter the username and temporary password from the account has been created for you email into the TA Marketplace console login page, as seen on the right. Then next, the console is going to prompt the user to enter and confirm a new password. The one that was received via email is only meant to be temporary. And then this new password is going to be your password for all future logins. The web browser is then going to populate and display a QR code to connect what you just entered, your new password, with your multi-factor authenticator, or MFA, using the MFA app of the user's choice. And for this example, over the next couple of slides, we're going to go ahead and use the Microsoft Authenticator app. And you'll see in a lot of our guidance, we use Microsoft Authenticator, but the Google Authenticator is also like perfectly fine. You can use that as well. So the user should open up the MFA app on your personal phone. And before you set up a new profile, the user must remove the old existing profile that's tied to your old password. And to do that, you just swipe left and hit that remove button. And you can also remove it by going into the account and then selecting the remove button from there as well. In step 5, the user is going to tap the icon in the bottom right corner of your MFA app's home screen to enable the app to scan the QR code that's on your computer screen. And then that will open up this screen right here, and you're going to hold up your phone to your browser, and that's going to allow the MFA app to scan that QR code. Once that code is scanned, the MFA app will automatically create a new MFA profile that will provide you with the one-time passcode that you're going to need to log in. And the profile is going to display that rotating code both on the MFA homepage, you can see on the left right there, and then also within the profile details on the right. And then finally, this is our final step. You're going to enter in the one-time passcode from your MFA to successfully log into your TA Marketplace account. If you ever run into any issues when you're attempting to log in, reset your password, and you're getting those error codes, please feel free to reach out to the TA inbox for assistance. We are here to help and work you through those issues. Next, I'm passing it to Meher.
Thank you, Courtney. So now we're going to shift gears and walk through a few important policies and reminders. So first, let's start with some updates to our vendor and recipient policy guides. We want to be sure to clarify something that many have inquired about, and that is that there is currently no cutoff date for PEA or SOW submissions. So our team, along with DHCS, is continually evaluating available funding, and we will be sure to communicate with all TA recipients and vendors as soon as we have an anticipated end date. So we just want to make sure everyone has full transparency around that. Next, we've made some updates related to no-cost extensions and amendment requests as well. So any request that isn't fully executed by both parties within 30 days after that Adobe Sign request, signature request is sent will be closed. So we just ask that you please try and sign those agreements as soon as you're able. And if there's ever an instance where you're unable to find the signature request link, you can reach out to our inbox and we'll be sure to resend it. And lastly, we have updated our model PEA package to include new TAM limitations and clear submission guidance. And so all of these updated forms are linked at the bottom of the slide for easy access. And additionally, if a submitted SOW has undergone rework and remains with the vendor or recipient for 90 days without any action taken to address reviewer feedback, the application will be closed. So these policies are part of our effort to maintain an accurate record of which organizations have active executed projects in the marketplace and to ensure timely progress across all submissions. So once again, these updated documents are at the bottom of this slide. Next slide, please. So next, I'd like to walk through our TA project progress report process, which many of you may already be familiar with. And these progress reports ensure that TA projects stay on track and that we can address any minor issues before they grow, and we can continue learning about our marketplace impact. They also give us insight into what's working well so that we can share best practices across partnerships on the marketplace. So both recipients and vendors complete these reports semi-annually, as shown on the timeline section of this slide. And the most recent reporting period ended on October 31st, and the next reporting window will open on April 1st, 2026. So these reports are really important, not only for our tracking purposes, but for ensuring that we understand your challenges and how we can support you best. So because of that, the approval of TA project amendments and the processing of vendor invoices is contingent on the timely receipt of all required semi-annual progress reports for all TA projects. Next slide, please. So in our most recent reporting cycle, we had 961 projects across 450 plus recipients and 60 plus vendors. Over 500 of these projects were marked as completed, and our TA vendors received an impressive aggregate score of 4.77 out of 5 stars. So on the right hand of the slide, you'll also see a few examples of positive feedback that we've received from our recipients. So just overall, a big thank you to everyone who submitted their reports. Next slide, please.
Thank you. Sorry, it looks like it's not populating with the slide content, but I guess you have your little graph.
You know what? I can summarize the statistics with this pie chart. So thanks, Courtney. So another administrative tool we use is the Managed Care Plan Contracting Survey. So this survey helps us track whether a recipient's contracting status has changed since joining the TA Marketplace. And on the survey, we also include a feedback section so that you can share your overall marketplace experience with us, as well as contracting timelines and etc. We also ask whether recipients are willing to have their contact information shared with TA vendors for future potential project engagement. So during our most recent survey, many recipients opted in, and we shared their information with TAM vendors in late August 2025. So on this pie chart, you'll see some key findings from our summer 2025 contracting survey. In the big blue section, these are most recipients who did not report a change in their contracting status. And for those who did change, that's in that smaller section. So about 7% reported that they are contracted with a managed care plan, 3% reported that they're planning to contract, and 1% reported that they are not contracted with a managed care plan. So these insights overall better help us understand the contracting landscape across the marketplace.
I guess now is a good time as ever to say that the slides are going to be shared afterwards. So if you can't see the slide, you can see it later.
Yes. All right, so next we want to reintroduce, I know Jenna kind of touched on it earlier, our TA Marketplace Project Closure Report. So this report is submitted through JotForm, the same platform that you all are submitting your questions, and it's used by TA vendors to close a project that has been completed before a progress reporting period begins. So once you submit it, our team makes sure to review the request within 10 business days. And if anything is missing, we'll be sure to reach back out. Otherwise, we'll proceed with closing the project. So just a few key reminders about this. Final invoices must be submitted within 60 days of that project end date. And all invoices must be paid before submitting the project closure report. So no invoices or payments will be received after a project is closed. And after closure, the project will appear under the Close tab in the console. So even if a project is closed, if it was active during the months covered by the semi-annual reporting progress reporting timeline, a progress report will be required. So just an additional note there. And while there is no strict deadline for submitting the closure report, timely submissions do help us identify unspent TA funds sooner, which will in turn allow us to reallocate those funds to new projects. So we do ask that you submit those as timely as possible. And next, I believe I'm passing it back to Jenna.
Hey, thank you all for the presentation. I am going to go just through some of the resources that are currently available on the marketplace. So if we go to the next slide. excuse me, there are also some resources that do not require a project with a TA vendor, between a vendor and a recipient. They are called those on-demand resources. This is a separate page within the CalAIM PATH website. These resources are publicly available for you to view and access. And we have been adding resources over the past few months, and we will continually add any that are developed either by TA vendors, CPI facilitators, etc. So please check back often. There is a search feature as well. So if there's something specific to look for, you can utilize that to see what is available. Next slide, please. So here is a full list of the key resources that we have identified on the marketplace. So we do have a guide that walks you through the TA recipient application to determine your eligibility and actually complete the application for the marketplace. So if you are new and not yet an approved recipient, we do encourage you to review that video. Also important is that once you are approved, we have ways in which you can identify projects and vendors to support you in developing your first project. So these filters were added last year to help you in supporting the identification of your needs. Those appear on the top left of the TA marketplace and really match kind of the identified needs that we had been seeing throughout the marketplace, such as contracting, billing support, etc. If there are any particular questions or support you need in identifying a vendor, the TA Marketplace is also happy to support you in that area. Also key and important here that we've referenced throughout today's webinar are the TA Recipient Policy Guide and TA Vendor Policy Guides. So these were recently updated, I believe, in October, and we do continuously update them and send announcements when they are updated. So do encourage you to look through those policy guides for any questions that you may have. We also have some instructions around, resetting your password or how to find that guidance. So those are really helpful documents if you have a really burning question. We also recently updated our project eligibility application model document. This was updated in October as well. And this was really to support TA recipients in submitting a successful PEA in line with the new limitation criteria, as well as any struggles that we have been seeing over the past few months. And lastly, we also have our sign-in guide, our account creation guides that really help you if you are struggling with logging into the marketplace, need to reset your password, wherever it may be. But of course, the TA Marketplace email account is always available to you as well. We typically give responses within at least 48 hours. So if you do have any questions that are not answered within any of these resources, we are happy to answer those. Okay, next slide. So we do have quite a bit of time for Q&A. So thank you for working with us through the Zoom difficulties today. We have been receiving your various questions through the chat form, and thank you so much for utilizing that today. Courtney, you want to kick us off with a question that we're seeing?
Yeah, so this was one submitted in supporting a recipient to request a hands-on project. It appears that the project needs to start in December of 2025. This makes it difficult to provide the requested 4 to 6 week start date. What is the recommendation to solve this issue?
Great, thank you. So as noted at the start of the presentation, we currently do not have any end dates for project submissions at this time. We are still accepting TA recipient applications, PEAs, scope of work, and budgets. The only note is that any project that gets approved will need to be completed by December of 2026. So at that time, we will definitely not be accepting any new applications. I did also see that somebody had indicated there might be a IT issue that we need to look into. So if you are experiencing that the system is not allowing you to click a date beyond December of 2025, we will work with our IT team to ensure that we update that as soon as possible.
Awesome. All right. Next question is going to be about final invoicing. So for the final invoicing timeline, should the date be February 2nd, 2026 and not January 2nd, 2027, for the final date for invoices to be submitted by vendors?
Yeah, so I think there's two things here. So again, final invoices for any TA project should be submitted by 60 days, 60 calendar days from that project end date. This is just to ensure that we are, dispersing funds timely, making sure that you all are receiving payment timely, etc. But then there is this separate piece of that we anticipate that there might be some invoices for those projects that continue through towards the end of 2026. And for that, we have set up a clear timeframe by which vendors and recipients either need to submit and approve invoices in order to ensure payment before the end of the PATH program. So that 2027 date is accurate for any projects that are still active towards the end of 2026. And we have seen that some projects are being submitted through December of 2026. So that is important to keep in mind, that you must have those invoices submitted and complete, meaning the recipient has approved them, to ensure that complete payment.
Okay. Next question is going to be about the project closure report and whether this needs to be completed for all projects previously committed or just those ones after a certain date.
Yes, so that is a great question. I know that we have communicated a little bit about this project closure report, but are really pushing towards it now so we can get a real clear indication of completed projects. We still have the question also in the progress reporting. So we have been able to see if both the vendor and recipient indicate the project is complete. We've marked it as such, but it would really be great if you could have that survey completed for any project, just so that we can clean up your back or your console as well, because we can go ahead on our end and actually mark the project as complete within the system. And that way in your queue, you can see only the projects that are currently active within that kind of approved tab. This project survey should be completed for any type of project. So it does not matter if it's off the shelf, hands-on, deliverable based, hourly based. It should be completed for any project that has been approved and has been completed and fully paid for. That is one thing that we do also make clear in the report, is we want to make sure that all your invoices have been paid, because once we close your project, you won't be able to invoice anymore. So one key item to think about with that project closure report.
All right. Here's an easy one. Will the slides be available after the meeting?
Yes, so I think we can probably plan to send out the slides even sooner than the recording. So the slides will be made available, the recording will be available, and also the Q&A document that we will pull together based on all of the questions that we are discussing live today, but also any questions that we are unable to get to during today's webinar. We will be sure to upload those to the TA website, as we have done for past events, and we will also send out an announcement to all attendees and recipients so that you all have those documents as well when they are available.
Next question is around a vendor's role during the PEA submission. And the question is kind of, do communications be sent to them only when the SOWs phase starts from the TPA?
Yeah, so this is a really good question. So we do strongly encourage that TA recipients and vendors meet prior to the submission of a PEA. The reason being is that this gives you an opportunity to make sure that you all are aligned on the goals, the timeframes, expectations, etc. So especially for those hands-on projects that are really supposed to be curated to each individual TA recipient, this just allows for you all to kind of discuss those goals and expectations prior to submission, and particularly the approval. So while the recipient ultimately is the one responsible for submitting the PEA to the PATH TAM and DHCS teams, the vendor can still be involved in supporting its development. But in terms of formalities, we do reach out to the vendor once the PEA has been submitted before we send it for recommendation to DHCS, just confirming that the vendor has the capacity to complete such a project, so that we make sure that we can support the recipient should there be any issues with capacity concerns.
Eligibility for a option 1 and or option 2 recipient. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. It mentioned including rationale about the project and whether the project would benefit ECM or CS projects. Is that also for non-contracted recipients, or is it just for those ECM or specific projects?
Yeah, so that kind of brings us back to the very start of today's webinar. The TA Marketplace is intended to provide support to organizations that are already contracted to provide or are intending to become contracted to provide ECM and community support services. So every TA project should have that goal in mind, that whatever you are working towards is really to support providing those key services to CALI members. So, it may be, that you all are setting up a care management system so that you all can do proper referrals for anyone receiving ECM and community support services. So while it doesn't need to necessarily be like this will, be a direct goal, but it should be embedded within. And actually, as part of the PEA, we have you specifically address how this will support you in providing those ECM and community support services. So it's very important that that's included for every project, regardless of your contracted state.
Is it the TPA's recommendation that start dates be 4 to 6 weeks in the future because of the 4 to 6 week review period?
Yes, that is our recommendation at this point, just to ensure that you all are prepared to have a start date that aligns with our review process. That is our recommendation. I will note, however, if we are able to, get your project reviewed and approved prior to that 4 to 6 weeks start date, if you have your scope of work and budget executed, you do still have to wait until that project start date to begin work, just because that is how the system is aligned for invoicing as well. So really work together in collaborating, thinking through, all right, we expect, to get approved within about 4 to 6 weeks. What is a good project start date based on your timelines, your needs, that makes sense for us to really begin the TA activities.
Can a CBO apply to be a TA recipient?
So CBOs are definitely eligible to be a recipient, so long as you, again, are either contracted or planning to become contracted with a managed care plan to provide those ECM and community support services. You will see on our website that we explain the 3 different options, as we indicated at the start of today's webinar, about how to apply based on your contracting status. So please be sure to review that. And if you have questions about what documentation is needed, do not hesitate to reach out to our team.
Okay.
I do see one here again about the project closure reports. The question is, are project closure reports only for projects that end earlier than the project end date in the scope of work? No, closure reports are for all projects. Once all those invoices have been paid. Again, this is a way for us to indicate that you have completed work and have been paid for your work, so that we can, mark the project as complete for our data and evaluation teams, and then also for us to evaluate if there's any unspent funds that can be reallocated to the TA Marketplace to, again, fund any future TA projects.
I have a question about the limitation or criteria and how it's going to apply to a recipient. So the question is, before I joined our FQCH organization, there was a small project executed on the TA Marketplace under $20,000. Are they still eligible for a project?
At this time, we unfortunately have the limitation if you have received a TA project in the past, that you are only eligible for a transitional rent related TA project. Again, the TAM and DHCS teams continue to evaluate our policies, what we are receiving for submissions. But at this time, unfortunately, we are unable to approve any new projects for recipients that have received TA in the past. All right, thank you for continuing to submit your questions. We are receiving them and reviewing them as they are submitted. So we do have a question that's interesting. If we have an active TA project, are we able to submit the last invoice, not complete the project closeout report, and extend the budget and scope of work and budget to achieve new deliverables and their associated costs? No. Well, we do. There's kind of two different things at play here. We do have the possibility of amending and extending your project through the no cost extension process. And then we also do have a full scope of work and budget amendment process. The no cost extension process is a form within the TA vendor and TA policy guides that just have you fill out some information about your project and why you were not able to complete the project within a defined time frame. We do accept one extension per project for up to 6 months. So just keep that in mind. For the full scope of work and budget, we don't receive these as often, and there needs to be a really strong rationale for why you would need that full scope of work and budget change. As part of that request, there is also a form that indicates why you need this, what delays there have been, why there has been a shift, and then we also request that you submit a red line version of your scope of work and budget that clearly indicates what you are proposing to be changed, including timeframes, costs, and then also any explanation of the deliverables. You have to complete that process and have it approved in order to be doing any work that is not indicated in your scope of work and budget. Any work that is completed on the TA Marketplace must align with the scope of work and budget that has been approved for your TA project. If you complete a project early, you can certainly indicate that to us through that project closure and have received your invoices. But unfortunately, without going through the process of an amendment, you cannot use funds without an approved scope of work and budget for that project. I hope that was kind of clear.
Okay. A question about looking for materials and important information, like examples of what a good project looks like. Where can somebody find this?
That is a good question. So I did note in part of the resources slide that we did update the model PEA package in October. And so that is a really good reference for PEAs and their successful submission. It kind of outlines really strong examples of PEA submissions we've received that have been de-identified. And we have little call out boxes saying why this should be included, why it's important to us as reviewers, what you should be indicating in particular places. So that is a really strong resource. Additionally, I think over the past few webinars, we've also been sharing some key areas and examples for both PEAs and scope of work and budgets on how to submit a successful project. So I think referring back to our past webinar materials, and we'd be happy to recirculate those in the coming weeks, but they are available on our TA Marketplace website under the resources page.
Okay. I think maybe we have time for like one or two more, Jenna.
We're still receiving them, so I do see one about should we expect an updated vendor recipient handbook shortly? The last update was July 2025. We actually did update it in October. You should have received an announcement. We sent it to all TA vendors and recipients that we have on record. So that is available now under the resources page. Just make sure that you are clicking the link that is under that resources page to make sure you're referencing the October version. They are also linked within the slides for today, so you'll also be able to access it that way. But we do have the most recent versions available from October of 2025.
Okay. When should somebody start a recipient eligibility application? Is there a last date for the application submission?
No, as of right now, we do not have an end date for any new recipients to join the marketplace. So again, those applications are rolling. So please submit them as you are able to, and our team will review and process those accordingly.
If a project, or did you already address this one? If a project does not complete work by the end date of that SOW, is this okay?
Yes, I think I might have answered maybe part of that one, but oh no, I actually did not. If it's not completed by the project end date, is that okay? So I had referenced earlier the amendment process, but projects must be completed by the end date. If you, for any reason, are going to be unable to meet that end date, whether it be, there are some delays, some staff folks were out, whatever it may be, you must request a no-cost extension. That form is in the TA vendor and TA recipient policy guides. Again, just ask for information about the project and ask for information about why you need the extension and for how long. And again, we do allow one no-cost extension per project for up to 6 months. And please be sure to submit those timely. We do request at least 10 business days prior to that anticipated project end date, so that we are able to review, process, work with you all, so that we can get that hopefully approved for you prior to the end date.
I guess one more tidbit I'll throw in there about amendments. If your project has already received an amendment and you're asking for a third or maybe even fourth extension on your project, it will need special approval by the TAM and DHCS team to get that in place.
Yes. I do see a question that from a vendor saying that their recipient contact is on a leave of absence. How do they go about adding someone else to approve the invoices? And I think, Courtney, you might be able to answer this about delegates.
Yes, yeah. So for the recipient account and vendor account, users have the option to add other delegates to their account. So you don't have to be an admin, you just have to have access to the account. You go into your account and then there's a little add delegate button and you can add as many people as you want. There's no limit. If you run into the issue in the sense that that one person is the only person that has access to the account and you're needing some offline assistance, you can reach out to the inbox and we can go in on the back end and add whoever you may need to get that invoice approved.
I think we can probably take maybe just 2 more I see here. Another question on the project closure survey. So that is a jot form similar to the progress report. So same kind of template where it's just a survey, actually similar to how you submitted your question. And that is available, that link is available in the TA vendor policy guide. Again, we are requesting that it's the vendor that completes that just because we want to confirm that you have received payment for any outstanding invoices. So you should see that within the most recent version of the TA Marketplace Vendor Policy Guide. Right.
Last question. Does a transitional rent related project have to be in domain 3?
This is a good question. No, it does not. Most often, we're actually seeing that transitional rent is typically within Domain 2, which is the community supports. However, have been other projects because they're more related to technology to support transitional rent activities and efforts where it falls under Domain 1. So it really does depend on your needs related to transitional rent. So strongly encourage you to work with your vendor and also to review those domains to see what makes sense. And if we have any concerns, we will send the PEA back, or if you have any questions before submitting the PEA, we're happy to address those as well via the inbox. All right.
Thank you, Jenna, for taking all those questions.
Yes, thank you for your support today. I think we can go to the next slide, which would have our email on it. But just to end today, thank you all for working with us during the webinar today. We're submitting your questions via the chat form. We appreciate you pivoting with us. Again, we will be releasing these slides to all folks who attended today's webinar, and we'll also let you know once the recording and the Q&A document are available. If we did not get to your question today, it will be included in the Q&A document, in the next coming weeks. And of course, if there are any immediate or pressing issues that you have, our team is available at the TA Marketplace inbox. But with that, I thank you for your attendance today, and we hope you found it informative, and we look forward to reviewing your projects. So thank you again.